Hi, I'm Josue Rodriguez, and this is the Misfit Gospel. Good news for misfits. So what's a misfit? Misfits are the outliers and the geniuses, the pastors and the pagans, the stay-at-home crunchy moms and the ones who should have listened to their moms, and so many more in between. So whether or not you feel like you're in one of these groups or whether you are, we all would agree it's time for some good news. Let's go. Today I have a good friend of mine. I consider him a really good friend of mine that I don't get to see all the time. So if you watch the episode with Kendrick, actually, you know you've come up a few times actually, randomly. But let's just get to it. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Joe Brewer. So I've listened. So you make music, right? And you do a lot of things. But I found out about you because you're an MC. So I listened to you for 20 some years, right? Yeah. And then happenstance, I meet you at the mall.
Correct.
and
outside of a Vans, I think, or at least I was going to.
Well,
I
was going.
Were you going to the Vans?
I was going to Vans because I worked at Vans. I was in between jobs.
That's crazy.
And I worked with Brandon.
Did we meet out? Well, we met outside the store.
We were outside the store because you were walking past me.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, I know who that is.
Yeah.
But I don't know what I didn't know your name.
Sure.
I just knew Syntax are terrific. So I just yelled out Syntax, and you kind of turned around, and you kind of smiled like, you know who I am? And I was like, yeah. It was like I was trying to be a grown man. I was
my recollection is I was like, I think I was kind of dressed for work.
Yeah, you were wearing
I wasn't
wearing a suit. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I was obviously who you would have expected to see if you were seeing me.
It was the hair.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
Well, I mean, it's just
sure. When 30% of someone's material is that they have gray hair.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's different than
it's called a tell.
Than I'd seen your Instagram recently because I'd only lived here 2 years. And so I think there had been a back and forth when I saw your son's baseball hat had what is the Generals logo? Did he go?
Yeah, so he went to Wade Hampton, but he would have been much younger when we met when we met in the mall. I mean, he would have been Greenville Little League or something like that.
It was I recognized it as a Greenville logo.
Sure, yeah, it would have been Greenville.
And I was
probably.
I was like, wait, you live? And you were like, you live in Taylor's, and I lived in Taylor's, and I was like, this is nuts. But yeah, so I just thought that was just funny, but because anybody that watches the episodes already knows this story.
Already knows this story, or the story about us meeting
because of Kendrick. Yeah,
right.
But it was fun because just to get to know you better and just know you as a person. All of a sudden, I mean, you weren't Syntax the Terrific anymore. Some people, you meet them, they're just going to always be that, and you can't not be that. But you're Joe, and so you're my friend, and I mean, there was only two men that I had a friendship with that came to the birth of my son. So you came, and I was like, done. I'm just like, this is we're gold for, and it's because I have 5 kids and 4 daughters, and so it was real special for people to take time to come see my son, and so yeah, that was pretty cool. But if you watch the episode with Kendrick, then you know all the ins and outs of that because Kendrick interviewed me on my own show. So
I feel like I need to apologize to your to the 7 people that probably are going to listen to this podcast. If I've already come up, I don't know how many episodes you've recorded. If I've already come up multiple times, and I'm probably the least audacious guest you're going to have in the entire history of Audacity.
I think Audacity is just me.
I think I'm occupying too large a percentage of the bandwidth right now.
Well, I think
it means a lot. It means a lot.
It's just funny because I had Yannick Berklin, right? Mm-hmm. Who's a producer, right? And DJs and stuff. And we were trying to figure out how I met him because he just contacted me on Instagram, and it was because of Brandon. Right. And so he and I have a back and forth of how I met Brandon, and which was at your house. And then and so that's that little bit. And then
you and Brandon had never met before. I had you guys over then?
We had not worked a shift before together. I'd always be coming as he was leaving.
Interesting.
So I was
So
aware
Brandon and I, you may know this, but Brandon and I met kind of the same way. He was serving me. I was at Starbucks, and he was like, it was the same sort of thing. He handed me my Starbucks and was like, "Wait a second."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he explained a little bit of that too. It's just fun. So I'm just bringing on a bunch of people that I think are cool. You know,
I'm very flattered and privileged, and I appreciate it.
it's awesome. So we're just gonna chop it up. We're just talking.
Yeah.
So I was listening to your Blow Mold Christmas. Is it an EP? How many songs make it an album versus an EP?
Yeah, I mean, I think historically anything in the 5 to 7 range was an EP.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot has changed in the way that albums are released. So a lot of times, like, Brother Ali just released, so he's got an album coming out in January, but he released basically half the record. I think it's called Soul Satisfied, and it says Soul Satisfied EP. So I assume someone did this before.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I was the first person to do this. So when I released The Last Unicorn,
right.
The original one actually said Last Unicorn. We called it an EP, but I actually called it an evolving play because I was going, instead of extended play, because I was going to add to it and let the album grow. Because it was and it was first released on Bandcamp. It was like the first time. I mean, again, I don't know that anyone had done that. I mean, now it's just sort of standard. You release, albums are built that way. They're rolled out that way in these smaller bits. But historically, back to your question, historically, it would have been 6, 7 songs. I mean, it's an album to me.
Yeah. No, I mean,
it's the only Christmas album I have. So
yeah, no. So depending on when this gets released, right now currently it's Christmas time.
Correct.
And so it's fun.
December 1st, actually, or 2nd, I guess.
It's fun to. I love Christmas. Christmas is my favorite. So, Christmas movies are pretty much the only thing I'm going to watch the next 3 weeks. And I'm actually thinking to order a Blackhawks jersey that Chevy Chase wears in Christmas Story.
So
I really want that.
I was watching it last night. As goofy as he is, I mean, his gear in that movie is top shelf. So you've got the fit. You have the Blackhawks jersey scene, but then you have like the plaid button up with the the U.S. Navy bubble vest, and then the old school Chicago hat.
Yeah.
His fits are strong in that.
Yeah, I know
movie.
it's pretty cool. So I'm hoping to be able to get that.
Yeah.
Because Jen's like, when are you going to wear them? Like on Christmas? I'm like, I will wear it all the time.
Are you a Red Wings fan?
I mean, I am a Michigan sports fan.
Sure.
So if I'm going to watch it, I'll watch the Red Wings. Or like on Thanksgiving, the only football game I watch a year is the Lions on Thanksgiving.
It was a good one this year.
Yeah. So
they almost blew it, but it was a good one.
I know, right? That was nuts.
So that's another connection we have, is that I was born in Michigan.
Yeah.
But I left when I was like 4, so yeah. I don't really claim it.
Kind of counts a little bit.
Yeah.
But you wear a Detroit Tigers hat sometimes.
Yeah, I wore a lot of Detroit Tigers hat. And when I was younger, I had some Michigan Wolverines. I was born in University of Michigan Hospital, but we lived in Pontiac, like right above Detroit. But
yeah,
but literally, we left when I was 4. So
yeah, so I lived in Flint, Michigan until I was 39. So
I know it.
It's a long time to live in one place, and it took a long time to get used to living in the South.
Yep.
Much less.
No, it's different. It's a different rhythm.
So I'm getting used to it, but at the same time, there's just still a little bit of me that's a little more.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it.
But so the reps, yeah. So that's how I found out about you, and then websites like Sphere of Hip Hop and things like that. But it's just but then you helped me record that one song for Jen for our anniversary, and then that's how Kendrick got on me about you and I need to record.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and so recently I realized that I'm neurodivergent with help from doctors and stuff like that. And I've realized, don't leave it up to me to plan it, because
Sure.
it just will not happen. I'm like, I'll come
I'm
up
not
with the most,
neurodivergent, but don't leave it up to me to plan it either. So.
but it's more like even with this podcast, me planning the recordings. I mean, this was the 5th recording.
Sure.
We probably should have had a whole lot more, but it's kind of like the last time when I recorded with Brandon, that I was like, we should put something on a schedule to record again. It was like, well, in 2 weeks, we could do it in 2 weeks. And I was like, I'm texting Joe right now. It was like, literally, they're like, we can do it on the 2nd. I was like,
Well, I'm glad you stayed on me about it, and I'm very, very glad it's worked out.
but so I mean, okay. So let's do this. Your first rap album, what'd you hear and why?
Like the first
Your first
rap
rap that
record
you ever
I ever
heard.
listened to.
Yeah, that blew your mind.
So there's sort of a couple points. So I think the first rap record I ever heard was Raising Hell.
Mm-hmm.
It was at a sleepover. It had just come out. So I think that's the first one I heard. You know, all those Beasties, you know, the first Beasties record, License to Ill, comes out. All my friends were into it. I wasn't super into it. So the two songs I always point to are Microphone Fiend,
Mm-hmm.
and then Terminator X, An Hour of Chaos, or whatever it's called. And I can't remember which order I heard them in, but I remember seeing the video, Rakim's video, and then we would listen to that Public Enemy record on the bus. I think it was actually the soccer team that we listened to that record. And I just, you know, that Flash Gordon sample at the beginning of that song, I don't know, it just sort of it was the first time that I was like moved in the way that that hip hop music can sort of move you. It just sort of like touches you in a very, very deep way. And I've tried to be real upfront about this from the beginning. I think better over time, you know, as a white person from the suburb, these were sort of vicarious experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, those moments didn't mean for me what they meant for my friends of color who were listening to it, but it meant a lot to me. And it was, they did two things. They were a window into a world that I didn't know, but that was helping me to sort of understand and have concern about. But it wasn't purely vicarious. It was very, very personal. And, you know, you don't know why art or various things subjectively move you, mm-hmm. but they did. So it was one of the things that was vicarious and very personal at the same time. Those are kind of the three things I always point to. There's a lot more, but those are like the first moments.
So what made you think, you know what, I could do this?
Oh, man. So before all of that, I was very into breakdancing.
Okay.
Couldn't b-boy. But loved, that was sort of my first like cultural love. Mm-hmm. So, like.
Mine too.
Yeah. I mean, that was like in some, as the culture, it actually predates emceeing. Mm-hmm. But I think even as hip hop culture was becoming more mainstream, that was the first, you know, entree. Because you had, that's sort of what you saw. And you had, you know, everything from, you know, the break-in movies to Wild Style, to, you know, Pepsi commercials and all the rest. But that was like really kind of the first sort of crossover element. But so when I was in third grade, I actually had a teacher that did not like boys. They actually specifically limited, God rest her soul, she cannot be still alive. Her name was Mrs. Fink, but they limited the amount of boys she had in her class, and they limited like the types of boys that they would like have in her class.
Really?
But she allowed us to break dance before class every morning.
Wow.
There was this little kid named Michael Johnson. So I mean, Michael, that was the other part. Michael Jackson was at the height of,
Sure.
moonwalking. This is all kind of the height of like all this kind of stuff. And I would like draw. I would draw like I still have them. I wouldn't even call them b-boys. They would be in parachute pants. It'd be a lot of bandanas, but they would have like a lot of mohawks and like they look something between like punk and b-boys. And so, but I was never good. I mean, I messed around with it all the time. I loved it. I was never very good at it. The emceeing part, I always say I've been a rapper since I was 14, which is true. I was probably writing a little bit before that. And by that time, I realized I was aware of some of the gospel hip hop groups that were out at that time. And I was very like inspired because my faith was very important to me at an early age. And I had a lot of, I know enough, you probably didn't do this, but I mean, I think any of us that grew up in the church that also loved the music and culture that was out in the world, there's a conflict in your heart. And so I was, I'd buy the Cypress Hill record. I would listen to it for a week and a half. I'd be convicted of it. And I'd put Scotch tape over it, and I would double Michael W. Smith tape over top of it. That was like the carousel I was on in my life. And that's a true story. That's not like a hyperbole. Like that actually happened. I was like, I can't remember, like Hand on the Pump or whatever. It's like the best song that I'd ever heard.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I can't listen to this. Anyway, so sometime in that time period, 13, 14, I was like, I can communicate my faith and the things that are important to me in this way. I love it. So I started writing. I was brazen enough. Like I remember at the time being like, well, I'm better than all the Christian rappers. Like that's what I told myself. Now I wasn't. And the Christian rappers then were not very good, but I was definitely, there were some of them that were very good. Super C, PID, all those guys. But I thought I had a lot of insecurity about you. The question you asked is, when did I think I could do that? I obviously had enough confidence that I was willing to sort of like stick my neck out from an early age, but it was many years before I felt like I had figured out what I had to sort of contribute.
So where does Syntax the Terrific come from? What's that name mean to you?
So my first name was Sunkissed, and I don't know that you know that, but that was. I do now. You do now. That was the name I had. So if you want to ask me about this, you can follow up on it. But my first demo tape was recorded with Dove, who was the DJ producer for SFC in West Covina when I graduated high school. And I went by the name of Sunkissed, Sonkiссed. I also happened to like the carbonated beverage of the same name, and thought it was very clever. I was that basically through college. And then I was like, this is a really corny name. This story's kind of too long, but basically I did this like chalk drawing of the word syntax with an I on because I thought, there was it was zero vandalism component to it. It was like literally in chalk. But I did that, and I was like, I'd rather my name be that. The dumbest part about my name transition is Manchild, he and I started DeepSpace 5. He and I were in a group called The Pride a long time ago. We were doing a show in Orlando, and I was on stage, And I was like, I am now and will forever be sun-kissed. And like a week later, I changed my name to Syntax Terrific. So I was gonna be. That's like on video somewhere. It was like this big hip hop, like Crewvention, this old like, for some, it was like a real unnecessary, like self-inflicted. Like nobody was asking what my name was or how long I was committed to it, and I announced that I will now and forever be this name that I abandoned like 7 days later.
That's hilarious.
So anyway, then the Terrific is just a sort of kind of like, it's sort of like it's stupid. The whole thing's stupid. Rap names are stupid, but they're just dumb, but they're dumb. Especially when they're contrived, but it's like a throwback to like D Nice or something like that.
Sure.
And it's just sort of like to take the edge off the too self-seriousness of naming yourself Syntax or whatever.
I mean, there is a bravado to hip hop culture, because I mean, every graffiti writer puts a crown in there,
correct,
in there somewhere, or a halo or something like that.
It's an element of the experience,
right? Or I mean, b-boys with their arms crossed and the whole what look, that's all part of it. I mean, yeah. So like when I was, you're a few years, you got a few years on me,
yeah,
but not that many.
Probably not.
But so I was probably 7 when Breakin' came out. So I would have been almost 8, since my birthday's in November. So I would have been almost 8. And so I just remember watching that and saying, because I used to be a really dark kid. I was a really dark brown kid. And so I was just like dark brown hair, really dark skin, really thick black hair. And I was like, these people look like me. I was like, that's amazing. Because I live in the Midwest. And so I wanted to do whatever they were doing, but I had no idea what it was called. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anybody that did that kind of thing. That's kind of like my story of everything I've ever been into. I don't know anybody that does what I want to do, but I'm just going to do it.
Right.
And so that's what that was for a long time. I think I was Ozone for like 3 Halloweens.
I'm very, very jealous. That's an awesome costume. I love it.
So, but I had a conflict too, because, well, at the time, my mom wasn't saved, right? God brought her out of a lot of stuff, but at that time, my parents weren't together, and my mom was actually an addict, and I lived with her, although I didn't know she was.
Right.
It was my dad who was the Christian who looked like the upstanding guy that wasn't the good guy. But so she gave me hip hop culture. She was like, here, this is what's cool right now. And I was like, so I was listening to like, what was I listening to? Africa Bambaataa.
Sure.
And I was like, this is real. This is amazing. And so I was really conscious of, there was something there, but I didn't know what to call it, and I didn't know anybody else that was listening to it. I didn't know what was going on, so I was just like, so it kind of, and now knowing that I'm neurodivergent, where I get like hyper focused and hyper fixated, it only means what it means to me. And so it's like when I like when I first went to your house and you and Kendrick kind of went back and forth of who's derivative of what, and because you guys were doing the thing, and I was just like, dang, because I was like, I don't relate to any of that.
That's not how I interface with the music. Right?
No, I was just like, it just has to hit me in such a way personally to where I feel like that meant it was doing something for my brain or me emotionally, but not in a, like, these are my people, do this. I didn't have no people.
Right.
It was just me.
Right.
And so sometimes even like when I talk about the Beastie Boys, I don't come at it from a, I have this rep the culture thing. I'm like, they were saying things that I related to, because in Christian music was not saying things that they were saying, but they were saying some godly things in my mind, because I grew up church, like so I knew the Bible and things like that. And so when I hear, 3 MCs and we're on the run, on the go, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. I was like, wait a minute. What? That's curious. You know what I mean? So I'm like, that's Bible. But when they talk about, just not being overtaken by fame and just all these ideas. I didn't really start paying attention to them until they put out Check Your Head.
Yeah, well,
So,
that's a different. I mean,
yeah.
that's a different beasties than
Yeah.
License to Ill. It's
So
just a
yeah,
totally,
I don't actually even like that album.
yeah, it's a different musical and sort of like
So it was just
Not con-
something matured about them, and
Yeah.
they became people that
pretty
I
much from
could.
Paul's Boutique on. I mean, they just kind of like, yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. What it is, and so it's like, as I dig and listen to other podcasts, I understand what Rick Rubin did with License to Ill, and it was like really important for what it was. But
No. Like, I don't. I mean, it's a very important record, and it's a good record. It's
Yeah.
not. It didn't resonate with me, and it doesn't sound like that's
Right.
like wasn't your entry point either. But it's a good record. It's. I
Right.
mean,
because I mean, I think the case in point, what I was trying to say was like with the b-boying, my dad, the Christian, said that's a sin.
Right.
Christians don't dance.
right.
And so I tried sneaking it for a while.
Right.
And it just didn't work.
Right.
You know, when you're, 8, 9, 10, with a father like mine, a Puerto Rican father that they're just, I only have a Puerto Rican father, so I don't know what other fathers are like, but mine was like really just in your head. He
Right.
didn't have to be there. He was already in your head,
Yeah.
and there was nothing you could do about
That's
it.
a pretty universal dad. That's a pretty universal dad trait. Yeah, I mean, we're at the ages we're at, which are much older than then. I still don't know what the answer is.
Mm-hmm.
I think we know what the Bible reemphasizes to us, and I think that biblical wisdom has been reinforced by psychological and social and modern human science. That what we put in our brains and what we come back to and is repeated has direct influence over how we think, how we behave.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's something like there's something deeply powerful and resonant about subjectively
Sure.
about hip hop culture for certain of us. And there's a bunch of different reasons why. I mean, it has obviously a universal appeal. In some ways, it's the most influential culture of the last 50 years. But there's something. It's not because, and maybe at some point, but I think I would just say for you and I, it's not because it's some sort of tool of communication to the world about what we believe. Mm-mm. Both things are just independently true.
Yeah.
We want to be obedient. We want to be obedient to God, and we want to live out and share His values. And we also enjoy this thing that children of God make.
Yeah.
And is very expressive and very, very powerful. Anyway, I don't know the right answer, the right balance.
No, I don't really think there is one, as much as it's more like what you said. We're cautious about what we put in our head, because if we want our lives to focus on God and in relationship with Him, then He is supreme. So what does He want for my head? And can I think it through? What helped me the most was when I actually confessed Jesus at like a month before I turned 18, my senior year of high school. Within a year, I was like super legalistic because that's how I was raised. Like when my mom got saved, she wasn't a legalist the way my dad was. My mom just loved Jesus. She just became like Jesus freak. Whereas my dad, the concept that my dad loved Jesus was like really foreign to me, like, because it's not what he talked about. He was where the faith movement thought process, or my mom was just like, this is just Jesus. And so I resonate with my mom because God delivers her from addiction. She was right into the street and has to tell somebody about it. And I was like, that Jesus in my dad's church, they don't got that Jesus. This Jesus, right? And so I said yes to that Jesus I was 17, but immediately all I knew was legalism. Immediately all I knew was the only way I talked to God was by asking for forgiveness of something bad I could think of.
Right.
And so I didn't really understand the relationship with God part yet, or the God loving me part yet. I just knew He was calling me out. And so I was like, yeah. But like probably almost 2 years later, I was at a job where they're always playing this music that was like this rock station, right? And so it's like I've always been ambivalent, like with hip hop culture. It's like almost like in high school, I dressed alternatively. I listened to Nirvana and I did the thing, but I went to an 85% black school, so I stuck out.
Right.
So I mean, I had long hair. I did that, but my slang, the way I talked was slang,
Right.
and I swore a lot. It's just insane. And so it was like this weird mix of it's like inside it's like way hip hop, just in the way I think and the way I formulate concepts, but on the outside it's like a skater.
Sure.
Again, with that dressing, I dressed like a skater, but I didn't know any. And I wasn't purposefully trying to emulate anything. And it's now that I go back and I look at like what other companies are putting out, how people were dressing on the West Coast, where I got cut off the bottom of your pants and wear them over your shoes and wear Pumas and do this thing. I didn't see it in a video. I didn't. Right. I just did it. Right. And so now it's just funny how it's like osmosis. I just kind of absorbed it and it became me. So I was trying to figure out, how do you do that and be a Christian? How do you do that? Because I'm like, there's something raw about an innocent or honest part of you that just loves this thing that doesn't really have any life unless you give it life. Right. This music or culture or self-expression.
Yeah, it's something to fill, right, with content, right.
But how do you love God, right? And so I didn't really understand it. And so I have a job and they're playing this rock station, and so it's like I know all the lyrics and I'm feeling like this real guilt and shame. And so I go to the pastor of the church we went to, and this is the first time I learned grace, because I had never heard anybody even teach grace. I didn't even know, like, the thing about having a Jesus freak mom is we only talk about Jesus. Mm-hmm. So I had no idea about church history. I didn't know about grace. I didn't know all the vocabulary. I just knew Jesus. And really in the long run, that's really benefited me, because I don't have a lot of hangups, like as far as church tradition goes. But I was like really bothered, because I was like, I really like this music and I don't know if I'm sinning, right? It's like he said, his music, this pastor, I sat down, I was like, okay, this is upsetting me. And he said, if Picasso paints a woman with 3 breasts, is that art? I'm like, yeah. He goes, is it a sin to look at it? I was like, no, it's Picasso, right? And so he goes, is the sunset art? I'm like, yeah, it's like God made it. It's like beautiful. It's got all the colors. He goes, right. He said, so I think we were talking about Metallica. He's like, is that art? And I was like, definitely yeah. Not. He goes, well, is it going to turn you away from God? Right. Are you going to reject God because you like that song? And I was like, no. He goes, well, I think you're okay.
Yeah, this is where
I was like, oh.
Yeah, this is where I think, this is, Paul says, everything's good. Not everything is profitable. And this is where I think some of the evangelical church and some of the religious right over the last 40 years have kind of contorted themselves, and for all of those who kind of had more legalistic sort of backgrounds, kind of got twisted in knots. Our moral calling is not a one-size-fits-all.
Right.
It feels like it is, and for the big ticket items, it is. We all should avoid murder. It's yeah. But in our day-to-day interactions, it is very situational. It is very relative. It is very subjective. And that doesn't mean that there aren't guiding principles, but how those things are applied in your life or in any particular situation are very nuanced and very subjective. And to quote a very non-Christian person, Sam Harris, the famous neo-atheist, he's got a whole book on sort of the scientific or logical basis for morality. He basically says it's a well-being test. Mm-hmm. Is this action making this person's life better or worse.
Right.
And in the Bible, we call that do unto others as you would have done to you, or to love. That's the golden rule, which is not in the Bible, but love your neighbor as yourself. We call that love your, that's what Jesus, that's
Right.
love the Lord God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
And that is the morality litmus test. Anyway, running that all back, whether Metallica is subjectively problematic for Josue
Yeah.
is a different question, whether it's subjectively problematic for me. Now, are there attributes of a Metallica verse or lyric that universally put that question in a little bit different box than whether praising the Lord through Mav City is okay for Josue and me? Sure. I mean, it's like, but it, and you go on along down the spectrum, but it's not because there is a pat rule. And this goes back to there's nothing wrong with legalism. I mean, I shouldn't say it that way.
Right.
But like legalism and only Jesus are all part of the same enterprise. It's like the old like Far Eastern sort of metaphor where, you know, God is all parts of the elephant. You know, he's the only but Jesus trunk, and he's the legalism rear end. I mean, it's all part of the same experience. And I guess even be more specific, like that's how we learn. Whether it's math or music, you start with black and white rules.
Yeah.
And you build from there, because we don't have the ability or the maturity early on to appreciate the nuance. So you learn all the rules of music about, you know, I don't even know the rules of music, meter and notes, whatever the rules of music are, because I know none of them.
Right.
And then you become competent enough that you get to play jazz, and you get to sort of like move within those rules.
Right.
And our faith is the same way. It requires a little bit of like legalistic ballast from which, from whence God can sort of lead us in the nuance.
Let's just see. This is how my brain works. I immediately just thought of Finding Nemo. When Nemo wants to go off into the deep, and his dad's like, no, you're gonna die. You got the little fin and the thing, but all he's really thinking about is his wife who got eaten at that same spot, right? And is his dad wrong? No. But is his dad teaching him out of fear? Yes. And so I've found that legalism really is rooted in fear. It's got the right box, but are you holding on to it in grace, saying this is a safe space for me because I trust God? Or is this box the same? Is the box safe, or is God safe? Right. And so I've found that to understand the box better, I have to not make the box a scary place.
Yeah, it's weird.
If you leave the box,
you've got me on a really weird side of this conversation.
Yeah.
I haven't been on a long time. I mean, I think, and I'm not trying to be contrarian.
No,
what you just said, I think what you just said is a good framing.
Yeah.
And I think it's the framing that's allowed, again, those of us that have had a little bit more legalistic evangelical backgrounds to like transition. Yeah. But I mean, the Bible talks about fear of the Lord, right? I mean, the Bible says this is like, that's the launch pad for understanding.
Sure.
Second, like, and this is something I've had to kind of circle back to, like, and I really am not, I didn't know what I came here for today for, but certainly not to promote legalism, because that's not how I live. It's not my vibe.
This is just how we roll. We didn't have no
that's
plan.
Good. But like, we need to be scared of some things. I mean, I think everything's like a pendulum swing.
Yeah.
Like our experience around safe sex was so heavy-handed that like 60% of our generation can't have healthy sex I just made up that stat. But like, it's actually hampered the ability for Christians to have like meaningful sexual experiences in their marriage, because they come with so much baggage.
Yeah.
So that's bad. That's bad. And so I think all of us are like, and I use that's illustratively. It's one of many examples. Like all of us have seen the negative consequences of like fear mongering, whether it's about hell or particular behaviors or whatever the case may be. But like, I also think that the depth of the risk is not known to us. Like we kind of think we know. Yeah. We kind of like, oh, I'm going to get pregnant, or I'm going to get addicted to drugs. I think the risks are much more existential than that, and they're much deeper. So again, neither of us know the answers, but it's some balance between exactly what I think your parents are beautiful. I mean, I think you got both. I mean, I think it's important that you got both. It's some balance of like, I don't know the risks my behavior is putting me in. I know some of them, but I don't know them. I need to be very, very fearful of them. I also know that I need to realize that God is here.
Yeah.
And he's taking me back in like constantly, no matter what I do.
Well, I think that the concept of having a little bit of fear is really the concept of, I think I have a limp that I'm not even aware of.
Yeah.
And now some people want to just rely on it and say, well, I'm only human, therefore I will fail all the time, and that is my excuse. But because I'm snarky, I say, yeah, but humans are made in God's image, so that means you're more than that.
Be perfect, even as I am perfect.
Right. So perfect meaning be set apart, be completely different than everything you know. Why? Because the lie. The enemy's been saying to me, the lie that he's been saying to everybody else. Lauryn Hill said something like that on her Unplugged album, but it's true. Which is if you do this thing, your eyes will be opened. You will know good and evil like God, and you will be a God. Yep. Little G, right?
And that's what has happened. Yeah.
And so I think everybody, Christian, non-Christian, every human will believe that lie.
Well, it's a truth,
right,
that lies about all of the consequence.
Well, it's like this, to the degree of how much I think I need God in this moment, right? For me, I need God in the moment where I'm like, I'm going to text Joe one more time. And I feel like I'm bothering this man because he got a different kind of life than I got, because I'll obsessively think about something like that, right? But then, I won't think about it as much when I probably should tone it down a little more at home because I'm just being really insecure, but on the outside I sound loud. You know what I mean? And so like with my daughters, if I do something, I'll say, Dad's too loud, or Dad's too
shocker.
Yeah.
You have kids that say their dad's too loud?
Or why'd you say that way? I'm like, okay. Right. I'll just say, okay, you didn't deserve to hear it that way. This is what I was meaning to say. I still don't want you to do this thing, but I shouldn't have said it that way. And I was like, and I apologize because of this. For one, because I think I did something the wrong way. And two, if you ever meet a man that won't apologize, he's the wrong dude.
Agreed.
And so that's what I tell them. I was like, somebody don't apologize is a coward, and we can't be that. So Dad doesn't have an excuse just because he's Dad.
Well, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I mean, I mean, it's like the Abraham Sarai problem. It's like where does our involvement end and where does God's work begin?
Right.
And I think you just described the inquiry. It's like, I think you have certain gifts and abilities and characteristics that you should utilize, and that, you hear God a certain way and you should act on those things. I also think that we should receive the feedback from the universe, whether it's our kids or our spouse or friends, that help us moderate and refine those instincts. And it's just like everything we talk about is just a work in progress.
Yeah.
a little unknowable.
I think I don't know. I really enjoy these kind of conversations because I have no idea what's going on, but the legalism thing is funny because it was just what really helped me was Christian hip hop. So
Right.
like because I was used to going to my the 1 year I tried to go to college, I used so much student loan money going to the family Christian bookstore buying music,
That is,
trying to find music that I like.
so first of all, there's nothing better than going to the Christian bookstore. I mean, it's an opportunity that doesn't exist. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
Crossway and Easley. I think it's like the last one on the planet, but
Right,
like,
yeah.
it was so satisfying for those
Right.
of us that did that on a regular basis. Second, I can't think of a better use of financial aid.
I mean, it was like I got pound tunnel rats and
Yeah.
and
Every drop of your
You know.
of your grant and scholarship money should have gone to TRs and gospel gangsters. And
but so
love
I
it.
was
That
like
makes me
trying to
very
figure out what I liked, but I was also buying. I think Goatee Records had just come out,
Mm-hmm.
so I bought everything Christafari. I bought all of Out of Eden.
I wanted Christafari to be so good, so bad. I wanted it to be so
Their
good.
first 3 albums, were
And I have a
just
lot of respect
amazing.
for their ministry.
Yeah.
Amazing's a little strong.
Yeah,
Amazing's a little strong.
the first 3 albums I really liked.
Sure.
Liked a lot.
Sure.
But at the same time, I was still new to. I am absorbing information
Yeah,
that
yeah,
I
yeah.
want
Yeah, yeah.
in a way that I can handle,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I've never heard music this way
100%.
and like absorbed it.
No.
But then at the same time, I was buying anything Tooth and Nail Records put out because I was really new to this.
Poor old Lou.
Yeah, but I was really new to this concept that Christians were alternative.
Sure.
This whole expression thing. So I was like, whatever they were putting out, and then, but I really got into Grits.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, just I was like, this sound, like their first
I mean, Mental Releases was,
album came out. I was like,
it's amazing.
and I still listen to it, and I'm like,
I mean, it's actually regrettable. I mean, what was the second one called? Factors of the Seven?
Factors of the Seven. Yeah,
So that album was good.
yeah,
No, actually, and it was a conventional like hip hop record. It was
Mm-hmm.
good. But I mean, Mental Releases was so. I mean, I need to pause. I mean, until I'm drawing a blank. He just released a new instrumental record. Northwest. What's the guy's name? Producer and MC. He's very dope. Anyway, it'll come to me in a second. But I mean, we haven't really had, and even who I'm thinking of is all conventional hip hop. He doesn't even do jazzy stuff, but like we've really never had something like that. And the biggest, and I've derailed. We weren't talking about Grits. The real bummer about that is it's the style that suited them the best.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
they were like kind of, I mean, apologies in advance, but like they're sort of modest rappers.
yeah.
They were very well suited to that kind of like off kilter, sort of jazzy.
It was very
sort of
Arrested
native.
Development.
It was very like native tongues.
Yeah.
And it suited them very, very well.
Yeah. So I was listening to that and I was like, because I remember I hadn't heard them, but I saw their ad and they were dressed like backpackers and everything. I didn't have that vocabulary, so I
Right.
lived in my own little
Right.
neurological bubble. So I just was like, I understand that picture. Same thing I felt when I saw Brainwash Projects.
Yeah.
Pigeon John and B Twice, and I saw them wearing suits, and I was like, I understand that picture.
Yeah.
I don't have to hear it first. I understand the picture.
Well, you sort of lived like kind of like in culture but against culture. So anything like that, I think probably resonated.
I'm just like
with
on
you.
the line.
Yeah.
I sometimes I feel like I'm just watching multiple movies going around all
Sure.
the time, and I just choose which ones I'm going to jump
Yeah.
into. And so Grits was one of them. And but then it just kind of moved me forward, and I'm like listening to this and listening to that, and then I find History of Hip Hop, and that's what 2001 I think, and I get in on it, and my username's Brown, And that's when I started using the word brown for stuff, because the joke was always like, I'm in the Midwest, you're in Michigan, there's no sun. And so it's like, if you're Puerto Rican, why aren't you brown? I'm like, for one, that's a misnomer. But two, there's no sun. So I started using brown for stuff because I thought it was funny. And now it's just kind of become a thing where all my artwork I signed brown. But so I first started using it there. And so there were people there that only knew me, like I met from there, that just call me Brown.
Sure.
Like that still, they don't know my name. But
by the way, I'm really bad with names. So when I met you, I hope this isn't like racist, and B,
you are very racist.
I hope that it happens a lot. But like, I think most people's inclinations, your name is Jose.
Right.
Like both sort of for the spelling and also just because like that's a more common Latin American name.
Right.
All I knew was your name wasn't Jose. So I don't think I have it. I think I saw it the other day. I think I have a notes app where I phonetically spelled out your name so that I could remember how to say it. I would just walk around and be like, Josue.
So it's just a little Spanish break then. So Jose is Jose.
Sure.
Josue is Josue.
Absolutely.
Jose is Joseph. Josue is Joshua.
Interesting.
And it's just in Latin American countries, because of Spain, because of Catholicism, you name your children after the Holy Family. You don't go reach into the Old Testament and pick a name.
Sure.
Though Joshua, Yeshua, Jesus.
Pretty common.
Very New Testament, very Holy Family.
Sure.
So yes, but then I'm very cautious to say that, because then someone wants to call me Joshua. I'm like, look, my birth certificate says Josue. My driver's license says Josue.
It's a great name.
My white mother called me Josue. My name's Josue.
It's a great name.
So anyway, but that also though being a thing where I'm like kind of always trying to figure out, kind of like a Basquiat thing, trying to find out where my world is, because I have, like, when I was really little, for a while we lived in Puerto Rico, and then we came back so I could start school. And so there's this part of me that's like, that's who I am, and I like this, and I like this, and how do I bring all these things together? And I think hip hop culture, at least artistically, the visuals of hip hop culture, because graffiti is where my mind sits, although I don't paint, but visually and cartoony and like on paper, it's how I create. But meeting Christians that made this music in an authentic way, whereas this is where Christians are going to make this music. I was like, I get that. That makes sense. And even though like on message boards, people go, but can a Christian do this? Can a Christian rapper take his shirt off on stage? And I'm like, why? Why is that a question? Why are you taking your shirt off? What's your deal?
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, the legal, and it never has changed. I mean, I've been here I literally have been here for all the Christian rap generations, all of them. And there's never been a moment where there hasn't been sort of a police force asking the same question. And it's actually, this is true of life. It's not unique to like the gospel hip hop community, but you just see it now. It's just like, it's the same questions. Can artists collab with general market people? Like you said, can they take their shirts off? Can they mimic styles? I mean, like whatever, can they use, gun bar metaphors, whatever the case may be.
Exactly. Yeah. Or can you say hell, or should we say Hades?
Yeah. Can you use like a double entendre that like, but I mean, the cool part, and this is a little bit of a side of what you were saying, but like, I mean, it's a unique part. I mean, it's kind of a unique part of rap music. I mean, it's a unique part of hip hop culture, but like of the form of rap music. Like in one sense, I think it's probably perceived as one of like the narrowest art forms, in the sense that like it's very attributable to people of color, to the Black community, to the experience of to the inner city marginalized experience. And so in one sense, it's kind of like, I think if you just ask someone on the street, like, is this an accessible and broadly useful genre? I think they would be like, no, I mean, this is a music style that certain people do, and they talk about certain things. But the real gift of hip hop culture, and I really do think there's something distinct about it, almost, I mean, maybe pop music like writ large, maybe kind of singer-songwriter a little bit, but like one of the gifts that the authors of hip hop culture and rap music in particular gave us was like, it's a very specific and explicit genre. And I don't mean explicit as in like adult. I mean like it's a type of music that you can fill. It's very word dense, obviously. Mm-hmm. It's the most word dense genre there is. And you can fill it with a lot of detail.
Right.
And so it lends itself to like use in all these different kind of ways. It's not like fully a content neutral. I mean, and I say this like, I'm somebody who's like, I don't sound like any of the people that I like. I wish I did. I just don't.
I always hate it when you say that.
Oh, I know, but I just don't. But, and I have a bias toward conventional sounding rap music. Mm-hmm. I want your voice to sound a certain way. I want the beats to feel a certain way.
Yeah.
That being said, it's just this broadly useful kind of content neutral genre that can be filled with all sorts of life experiences.
Yeah.
And the word you used, in an authentic way. Yeah. I mean, it's just like anything. It can be used in a real inauthentic way.
Sure.
Obviously, all you have to like listen to a Honey Nut Cheerios commercial where they've, bastardized, an attempt at a rap song, but it's actually a medium that lends itself to people expressing a wide range of backgrounds. And you not only see that, like, the cool part is you not only see that in like a variety of demography, from like white suburban kids to, black inner city youth. You actually see that in the black community itself. You've seen this like amazing, beautiful, like, from the Project Blodes, you reference like Pigeon John to like two more traditional sort of conventional sort of stylings. It's just like this really, really beautiful range of types of humans and the things that they reflect on. That was too much talking on that, but
no, it's
but it's just I've always felt that way. It's just like it's a very malleable genre.
I think this is a good conversation just because, I mean, Christian hip hop is having its own surgence now in a different way, where back in the day, if you were a believer, you made hip hop music, you knew you were not going to make a dime. You did it because you wanted it, and you can make money now.
Yep.
And so it's got a whole different approach and sound. Everything, all of it sounds not just stylistically or the way rappers are putting verses together, but just in a general sense. It's just got this whole feel that's different. And I think probably hip hop culture in general has a whole different feel to me now. That again, I don't want to sound like a gatekeeper, but if I go back to why I started listening in the first place, I can't find it currently. I can't find that why currently.
But it's not there because it's not really there.
Yeah.
But we're not gatekeepers.
Yeah.
We're older. We're old.
We're older. Yeah.
And, I've had that. We've all had that sort of evolution. Like this, for all the things we just said, this is in the first instance a reflection of young people going through some struggle. And it needs to continue to be that. Needs is maybe not the right word. I mean, that's my preference, that continues to be the source material for where hip hop goes. And if they prefer trap or they prefer, 180 BPM hi-hats in their songs. Like, it's not like it's taken me a long time to come on board with that, but that's their prerogative. And I'm determined. I'm determined to support it. Not because I'm going to be able to listen to all of it or because it resonates the same way, but because I believe in the process, and I believe in like the lineage, and it's important to me. And to your point about like how gospel hip hop has come along for the ride, like it's a beautiful thing. Like I can only listen to so much Lecrae. It's not really like my vibe,
Right.
but
Yeah. Well, then
but
I'm glad you said it.
no, but like
No shade on Lecrae.
no, it's not even a little bit. Incredible music.
Yeah.
Incredible talent, incredible man. I mean, like a man who is like expressed himself over and over again, regardless of the consequences from either side, and a man who has influence among athletes and musicians. I mean, it's a deeply emotional thing. But then you have like the internet and TikTok is like broken down all these barriers, and it has for decades. But it's like the Caleb Gordons of the world who basically made a name, on TikTok. And I mean, I listen to him routinely.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's not like my first vibe, but I listen to him all the time. A, because I like it, and B, because I'm proud of. I'm just proud of what. I'm just proud of what the gospel rappers have been able to do with the opportunities that God has given them, and that our industry, I mean, I was part of a group that like demonized the word Christian rap as much as possible.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I think a lot of us did.
I'm not like distinguishing you, but I'm just saying, like, I mean, we're the same mindset. Like, I never wanted to be called a Christian rapper.
Right.
I still don't really want to be called a Christian rapper. But the names don't matter. I've always been proud to talk about my faith. And I have a deep sense of pride in by whatever name you want to call it, what God has done over many, many decades now, and the platform that the Andy Minios and the Social Club Misfits and all these guys have now is just really, really beautiful.
Yeah. And
and I'm glad they're getting paid.
Yeah, getting paid.
And can I say one more thing?
Yes.
I never like. This isn't like football free agency or like NBA free agency where it's like, well, in 1981, why didn't I get, $140 million contract when it was sort of comparable talent? I mean, none of us deserve that money.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, maybe, Plato should have gotten his money. Theory has it should have gotten his money. Gospel Gangsters maybe should have gotten their money. I mean, I can probably count on a hand, there are 10 people that should have gotten their money.
Or LA Symphony.
In 1998. LA Symphony shouldn't have gotten their money. Pigeon maybe. LA Symphony shouldn't have gotten their money. I mean, those guys, I mean, I listen to them around the clock. I have a cat named Haters. Okay. I love LA Symphony. Yeah. So this is like, but like.
I really like that Baloney album.
And they were their records are, Baloney's dope. Their records are dope. But like, anyway, I'm just being stupid. All I have to say, like, the people that have come up, they're making like the production, the engineering, the lyricism, everything deserves to be compensated.
That's true. I think one of the things for hip hop made by believers that really helped me in that transitional period when I was newly married, and my oldest daughter was just, gosh, she was 1, 2. And that time period is, I wasn't just finding a voice. It was kind of like when I was 14 and I really just dialed in on what the Beastie Boys were saying. And then I kind of pulled from Tribe, and I pulled from Black Sheep just a little bit here and there, as much as I felt like I could comprehend, because Flint, Michigan is there was a big gang culture there, and so I took all of it very seriously, almost as a health and safety thing. I don't play games with any of this stuff. I'll take what I feel like I can legitimately represent, even though I'm not trying to represent it. If I think I comprehend it and I can talk about it in a normal way, even with all the slang I'm saying, no one's going to think I'm trying to front on anything.
Right.
But in the same way, when I'm, 23 and 24, 25, and I'm fighting Sphere, when I heard Marzill's Raw Material, and I was like, this makes sense to me a lot. It was kind of like when I'm 18 or 19 and I hear Grits. And then, but what really hit me was when I heard The Night We Call It a Day, the DeepSpace Ride, with the immediate intro, and I was like, stop the presses.
It's a pretty special instrumental, that first song.
I've been waiting for this. And it wasn't like, I've been waiting for Christian hip hop to get to this or anything. It was like me personally, in my soul, I was like, this. I don't know who these people are. I don't know anything about it. Because like, I was so used to going to the Christian bookstore and it's like, if you like this, you'll like this. And so when I looked at DeepSpace, when I looked at the record the first time, or the CD, I thought it was another compilation.
Sure, kind of like, yeah.
Another one.
Sure,
I was like,
sure.
I don't know what this is. Who are all these guys? Yeah. I don't know. I'm gonna get it anyway. And then I sat and listened to it. I was like, because at that same time I was listening to, Incubus. Right. You know what I mean? They had just come out with.
I'm glad that we were like some natural segue from Incubus back into.
But that was just like where I was at. So I was just like, but at the same time, it wasn't because I represent alternative music. It was just like, these songs on this album, I get this. But the thing about music made by believers was I had the bass line of, we all believe in the same God, and I think we're all trying to work this out. And I hear it in the music.
So that is like, and the older we get, like, we're just old. I mean, we're just old. But that's like the whole litmus test for me. It is certainly now. It kind of always was. Like, are you? Like, I don't. I mean, I'm trying to think of a good example that isn't. But like, I don't need you. I mean, this is a very bizarre example. It's old and stale, but like Indigo Girls. But like, I don't need you to be I certainly don't need you to be explicitly Christian or even faith-based. I just want to hear you caring about the big things.
Yeah.
Like you said, are you and you were being a little bit more specific on the Christian side, and that's definitely what I prefer. But like, so I mean, this sounds crazy, but like Hosier's a great example. I mean, Hosier is, I'd listened to none Hosier. My girls were into, I saw him and we were at a festival in Chattanooga, and I literally just knew Take Me to Church is all I knew. And I wasn't really a big fan of that song. I had no idea like how philosophical his music was. And he seems to be all but a nihilist, which I don't really, I think is very, very misguided, but I'm very moved by him asking the questions. And at this point in my life, like I have very little time for music that's not asking some questions.
Sure. I mean,
let's get back to DS5.
I think with DS5 though, see, I was already listening to Plato a lot.
Right.
Because
he was good.
Ilharmonics.
Right.
But I was only listening for him.
Sure. Well, I mean, all of us were. I mean, same like the E-Rock albums. There was Ilharmonic. Same thing with the E-Rock. Like I bought the E-Rock albums to listen to Plato. I called Greg Manchild, and I was like, there's this guy on this E-Rock album, and he sounds like a little bit like Raffi. There was this line about backstroking through the speaker. And I was like, he sounds a little like Raffi. Very, very good. So all of us were buying those records for Doug.
So I just was like, okay, oh wait, he's in this. Okay. I got that. And so I start connecting dots, and I was like, okay, Marzil is in this, but they're a group. And so I just, because sometimes I'm slow on the uptake on this. I'm like, okay, this is a collective. Okay, I know who these guys are. And then I inadvertently, I never got into Lab Click, even though artistically I'm like, I don't know why I didn't. I mean,
it just wasn't like you either kind of had their tapes or you didn't. You know, it was like, I mean, you couldn't find anything this whole conversation. You couldn't find anything time. You certainly, I mean, I don't know how anybody got those tapes. I mean, Greg found them on a message board, and you know, we were connected with them pretty early on. But like, you would have loved those tapes.
I mean, I've now listened to them now because you can stream them.
You can, yeah.
But I'm like art core and low quality bus and all that, and I'm like,
Shadow Your Smile. I mean, they're so dope.
This is, Perez Prado and all that. And I'm like, this is smart.
Yeah, it's such a crazy picture of the subjectivity of art, because it's hard to explain it. You're exactly right. It's something like, it was like conventional, not conventional, very like, it seemed like the least intentional thing you could possibly do.
Right.
And yet tremendously smart. It was very weird. At this day, it's hard to, I mean, they just, that stuff is crazy, because they just like, crazy samples. They made these real lo-fi beats.
Yeah.
Ill Trip's just running through just writing words and just running through the beat. And if you had, this is going to be very racist, but if you grabbed, this would be very racist, and I apologize in advance.
How audacious.
But if you grabbed, you know, 6 out of every 10 just random black kids off the street and asked them to do it, it would be listenable. You do that with a white, I mean, to find an Ill Trip who could just like run through the beat with no cadence, and for it to feel like something right.
Yeah.
Was like really, I mean, you could say it's like, he was good at that because that's what he was good at, and he knew it, but like nobody knows it. It's just unlikely is the bottom line. It was just always very unlikely.
Well, per your racist statement,
it was very racist in
it's
both directions. By the way,
it's stereotypical.
It's stereotypical. It's certainly very stereotypical.
But
best case scenario, it's stereotypical.
But to some kind of truth in it, if you grow up in a scenario where that is your sound, this is your people's sound, you are going to absorb it. Whereas
that's right.
In the time of the hipster and the beatnik and all that, jazz was their sound, so they absorbed jazz and they absorbed that culture. And so if you're around it enough, or like my son. Okay, my son's 5, so he's been at the skate park since day 1. So he'll ride a balance bike and drop in, and skaters stop and watch him. And they're like, "How'd you get him to do that?" I'm like, "I didn't get him to do nothing. He's been watching you his whole life."
That's
and
right. He's just been watching other people do it.
Right. So
well,
I think
it's also what we perceive as like the right way versus. It's also like a little bit like the way the world is conditioned to expect certain types of things to sound or not.
Right.
Sound.
So I mean,
anyway, that's really not the point of That's really I really derailed.
We're talking about Lab Click.
Yeah, that was the point. Is Lab Click was a very improbable, unbelievable experiment.
Although I thought Listener was black.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm. No, I mean, truthfully, both of them project that way, and definitely Dan. And this is the thing that Greg and I have yelled at for years. He had, so when we met him and we wrote, when we did the first DeepSpace 5, it's an EP. I don't remember what we ultimately call it, like, is the first, we recorded in a hotel in Orlando. Is precedes night, we call it day. You can stream it now. But like when we wrote that, like we got there and he was like, I don't write in bars. Like he couldn't count his bars.
Oh, okay.
And we were like, what are you talking? Like, it was like, what are you talking about? And I had perceived him as such a like conventional bar like
Yeah.
writer.
Yeah.
And that's not who that's literally, Night We Called It a Day is just like lines that he would just write them
Yeah.
and then figure out where the words fit over the beat. It was very weird.
Yeah.
Because to your point, that's not the way he sounds on Lab Click tapes.
No, and I think that it's just not the way he thinks either. So it's that's the genius of his genius is I want to be a part of this so badly. I will figure out a normal way for me to do it,
Right.
and not try to be like somebody else.
Well, and this is really the when you brought up DeepSpace 5 and the way, I mean, I think the weird part is Night We Called a Day is still a very derivative record. Like half of us were very influenced by the backpacker scene of the mid to late 90s. The other half, we were all very influenced by the Tunnel Rats. We were very influenced by like the West Coast underground scene. So like the weird part is, I think to a person, all of us would say we were still trying to find our voices.
Yeah.
And we felt either at the time or shortly after, like we still felt very derivative. That being said, I think the reason the Night We Called It a Day worked and why ultimately DeepSpace 5 worked is because we were on the road to finding very natural voices, and we cared about that.
Right.
To your point about Dan,
right,
Lab Click, like that was it was important for us. It was important for Greg and I not to sound like LP,
right,
from Company Flow,
right.
Like, and there was a moment where we were both trying to sound like that, or Aesop Rock, or whatever the case may be.
I don't think anybody sounds like Aesop Rock.
Nobody sounds like Aesop Rock, but like, there's a, you're grabbing all of these, you're just grabbing all these influences. I mean, there's a time where I thought SS Mob, but you probably don't know who they are, but like there was this like very, like this gospel. They were a little bit after Gospel Gangsters, but they were like a very West Coast gospel rap group. I love them. I wanted to anyway, I'll say, I think the reason Night We Called It a Day worked is because notwithstanding the still fairly derivative moment we were all in, we had certainly collectively, we had found, it was not something new. It's not like we didn't invent something new. Mm-hmm. We were doing something that I think people knew was mostly true to who we were.
I think it was an authentic representation of where you were at that time.
That's right.
In the place you were given.
That's right.
I mean, had I honestly, I had not listened to Black Alicians. I had not listened to Black Alicious until after Gift died.
What?
I had never sat down and actually listened to it. Because in that time period of like 99 and stuff, with me, I'm either really quiet or I overshare. There's
Sure.
no middle.
Sure.
I'm either or right. And so in that time and space, it was either I'm going to focus on this or I'm going to know all of it.
Yeah.
And so it's like I would go and I'd be on like the sphere and I would say, I understand this. I don't care about that. That's just an opinion. That's this. And then I'd go on and I do battles with people and stuff like that. Yep. And people hated my style. Key styling. I would just do that. And then we had a fake rap group on the sphere.
I like it.
We were called the Crew Necks.
I don't hate that
because I just typed out this line that said, "'Cause we're like sweaters, we bring heat when we compete." It's just the stupidest thing in my mind, and I was like, "We're Crew Necks."
I mean, that's a pretty dope line.
And so it was just, I was at my job being a really bad employee, key styling and instant message rapping with people, going back and forth, and I still have some of them printed out, and I was just like, I kind of like that line. I kind of like that. I don't like that line. But at the time, it just gave me something to be a part of.
Sure.
Because also, I know some people still roll their eyes now, but because of the payable on death, colloquial known as POD,
Yeah.
I first heard them in '97. I was at the Cornerstone Festival, and a friend of mine was like, it was my first time being there, and my friend was like, it's like 11 o'clock at night, and my friend's like, you got to go hear this band, Payable on Death. I'm like, why? And he goes, they're like the Christian Rage. I'm like we need that, right? And
They're
then
like the Christian Rage. That's
and
amazing.
I mean, but that's 1997, right?
Sure.
And
No. I mean, that's a totally reasonable.
And so I get into the tent, and it's full of sweaty
Sure.
young adult men. Probably
moshing, right?
There's probably 150 dudes in there.
Right.
And I'm looking, and I see them. I was like, all right, a black dude, Mexican dude, and two dudes that are brownish, and they're talking like I talk. Because I'm with people that don't talk like me.
Right.
I have a habit of, I'm very, for the sake of sounding racist, I make the joke that I'm not brown, I'm khaki. I fit with white people. I fit with all colors.
Right.
I'm very neutral.
Right.
But I've always found that in church, white people were way more comfortable with me. But at work, brown skinned people were way more comfortable because at work, at work I show out, but in church I don't.
Right.
But in this case, all of my friends that were there were white, and so they didn't talk the way I talked, especially a native way that I
Right.
talked. And so a lot of times, like my kids or my wife, I'll say, I grew up in the hood, and they're like, I'm like, I identify with it because it was around me. I did grow up
Sure.
in the hood, but I wasn't hood. In part, it'll be a very odd thing to say. In part because I have PTSD because of all this trauma I went through. I don't even remember much of my childhood, so I literally don't. So I had to go through a lot of therapy to talk about some stuff. But in this sphere, because of now neurodivergence, because I couldn't pay attention to much anyway, I just absorbed things around me. I didn't have the attention span to become a gangster or to go over here and become this or to drink or to smoke or anything. So I had my religious experience and I had this mental emotional experience to where I just didn't have the ability to step out. So I absorbed it. So my thing is in the hood or impoverished areas where people even agree, around me were mostly Mexicans and white people in my neighborhood. So in the mid to late 80s, in where I lived, the white people were the hippies that were getting older. There were bikers, like 1%er bikers and things like that around in my neighborhood. And then lots of Mexicans, like coming up, migrant workers. They would come up to Michigan and work in the farms and stuff. Some, actually were third and fourth generation, but, abuela speaks Spanish, but nobody else does. And so in my elementary school, most of the people that went there were Spanish-speaking kids. So I stuck out there because brown kid, black hair, I looked the part, but I don't speak Spanish. So that was always weird. So white kids felt more comfortable with me because I was the brown kid that they could talk to. But I didn't get along with them because I didn't relate to them.
Right.
But we grew up in the same neighborhood.
Right.
So I just kind of absorbed what I think is common that we call the vernacular of the hood. I'm just using it for the
Right.
colloquialism. There's anger in it. I was an angry person.
Right.
This vocabulary made sense to my anger. I didn't know I was angry, right? You know what I mean? There is a sense of, there's an impoverished ideology when in a thought process that you just pick up as almost like by osmosis that is very insulated. So if you're in the bubble, it doesn't matter what you look like. This is now your vocabulary. This is not how you think. This is not how you dress. This is, and so because my mom was who she was and she was more like this hippie thought process, rock and roll as a visual made sense to me, but the rest of it made sense to my soul and in my mind, and so in my self-expression. So when I say I'm from the hood, that's really more what I'm in. my soul identifies with it and lived in it, but the rest of me just kind of existed. So when it comes to not knowing, never listening to Black Alicious and things like that, I found in Christian hip hop of the early 2000s, I was like, I can understand this. I'm trying to follow Jesus, and they have a general idea that I can focus on here. So like when you had like gospel gangsters and stuff like that, I was like, great, but I don't want to hear a sermon in a song. Mm-hmm. I want to hear Syntax be sad and talk about Jesus. I want to hear Star Wars and Jesus. You know what I mean? I want.
This way that means a lot, man.
That's that.
For you to be able to be that specific about it.
But I want to hear I'm a patriarch b-boy breaking bones in the park. I'm like, we probably shouldn't be able to say that, but he said that, and that works. I'm like, because we do, you know what I mean? We are, and but that's like, but I was like, because that's like on, that's on Raw Material, I think.
That's Compound Fractures.
Yeah. So I'm like, that's my favorite song on that album. And your verse is my favorite. It's not because we're friends, but before I had no concept. I'm like, that's my favorite verse on the whole album. But Man Child has a lot of gems, just a lot of one-liners that are just like fire. But as far as that album goes, that's my favorite verse. And so, but as per POD, when I saw them, I understood them when I looked at them immediately. And so they used to be, we're all in the same age room within 3 to 5 years. And so it gave me something to look at and listen to that I identified with. I listen to Christian hip hop. I didn't think I can be that, right? I thought I enjoy this, I appreciate this, and as an art form, and I'm receiving this as food. But when I saw Payable on Death, I was like, that is something I already am.
Right.
I can be that and identify with that, and it helped me in a way that I needed at the time. So a lot of people are just like, oh, POD. I'm like, no, you don't understand how big a deal it was in 1997 when they only had 2 albums. Yeah. And they were just touring. This is before anybody knew who they were.
No, they were a very, very big deal.
But
they were very good.
And so now they're just rock stars. I mean, I mean that in a good way.
Right.
They're just world famous rock stars. Sure. They can just do whatever.
Sure.
Musically, they're just that's where they're at. And interestingly enough, I've found that I think therapy and just finding myself ministerially and how I am with my kids, I found that I've let go of like a lot of the Christian heavy music that I was really into, that I identified with, that really fed my soul, that really helped me. I have found that the sound I don't need anymore. Sure. But I'm still going back to, Deep Space 5.
Interesting.
Like my kids found Baloney, and now every time they want to get in,
very listenable.
My daughters are memorizing the lyrics on that album.
I was getting confused. Is King Kong on that one?
Yes.
And I mean that's the one and I think Haters is on that one.
Haters,
King Kong. It's a great album.
And so it's like I saw a few months ago, I was on their page, on their Instagram page, and there was this post that said, "Is Baloney the greatest LAS album?" And
yes, that's a fact.
Yes,
that's actually a fact.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, that's a fact.
And I think it's just because of their issue with not being able to release their second album and the whole deal with that label, which I know the name, but I can't think of it. The interesting thing enough is really the only real reason I focused on what they were about to put out, the reason I knew Baloney came out, was because I was listening to a band called Chevelle, which got released onto their album, the label that they got signed to that went defunct. Because I was at Cornerstone Festival the day Chevelle got signed. Now, Chevelle was like the Christian Tool. I don't think they meant to. They were just 18-year-old kids, and they sounded like Tool.
Right.
And so they got a set in between a band called The Insiders, which is a ska band out of Detroit, and a band called Dear Ephesus, which was an emo band. And they all kind of knew each other. And I knew people in those bands, and so they put them on. And so in the middle of their 3-song set, these kids didn't even face the crowd. They played with their back to the crowd, And in the middle of their set, they sold out, and all they had were cassettes, and they got signed that day to that label.
Dang, that's
So
awesome.
it was them and Sixpence None the Richer,
Yep.
and LAS were like the big names on, and
Sure.
then the label went flat. So I was aware that LAS was supposed to put something out, and then I was like, wow, that didn't happen. And then, Bologna, I was like, this is brilliant. And so then I saw
The packaging, everything.
about it is just
Yeah.
great. And that's why I love buying CDs, is because you get, it's so thoughtful. I mean, it's bread, and then the CD is the bologna, and the bread is on the back, and they have the little label, like a sandwich label, and it says, it's just fun. So my kids are listening to it, and they're memorizing all the lyrics, and so we're rapping along with it or whatever. And but there's something about it. They're like, so these guys are Christians? I was like, well, I think some of the members are professing Christians. I think so, far as I understand. I think Pigeon John does,
Right.
and as far as I know, Joey the Jerk is. At least I think so. But I'm like, but look, here's the deal. I was like, they're gonna say something here that we can repeat as far as faith goes, but
Freaks.
but then Flynn says. What does he say? Heterosexual tactics, ladies love the L. Yes, it's so automatic. So I'm like, okay, guys, this is what this means. It's a reference to LL Cool J, and he's not gay.
Right.
I was like, so that's not necessarily not Christian, but it's not the gospel.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
So, but that the thing about what I didn't get as a kid, as it came to culture and music, was someone just sitting it down and say, okay, this doesn't line up with our lifestyle, what we believe, but this is a good part of it.
That's right.
And so that's what I get to do with my kids. I'm like, because my daughter, who just turned 14, is now into K-pop. And at first I was like,
Disaster.
oh my gosh, I
No,
was
I mean,
devastated. But as I just was like, okay. My oldest daughter, when she was listening to Bieber when he first came out, and I was like, and it made me really, really insecure, because that means she was changing, and he's cute and all this, and I didn't like it. It made me really insecure. I was like, we ain't gonna listen to that. And so I was like, here's POD, here's Living Sacrifice, here's everything heavy, right? And so I was like, you're gonna listen to this with Dad.
It's also like 25 years old.
Yeah. So, and I thought to myself, I don't want to do this to her, because now as an adult, she's had talks to me. She goes, it would have really been helpful if I could talk to you about boys.
Right.
I was like, it would have been helpful if I knew better then.
Right.
And I'm sorry.
We're growing up with our kids. I mean, it's unfortunately.
So now with they're 10 years apart. And so I was like, okay, I'm not going to do the same thing. So by texting my oldest, once I realized she was listening to this, I was like, help me, your sister likes K-pop. So she calls me.
How do I participate?
She's like, so she calls me, and she goes, she just lays it out for me. And so then I can go, and I'm like, okay, this is what I understand. This is what I know. Let's talk about it. Right. And so, and so now she's just like, I only like this, and like, in their music world, in their product, they're only allowed to sing about these things, and they're not allowed to be like really sexual over here and do this. And so it's actually pretty clean.
Yeah.
And I'm like listening to it, and I'm like, it actually is. And so like I'm learning to have an ear for this sound, and I'm like, at first listen, it sounds like Korean in sync.
Sure.
But once you sit down and you have a fan of it explain it to you. When I just listen to my daughter as a fan of it, I'm like, okay.
Well, that's what I've sort of learned, whether it's food or music or like an activity. Like, if in one sense, humans are just dopes, and it's sort of like the Lego movie. Like,
Yeah.
Everything is awesome. We can clap the baby shark mindlessly in a stadium together really, really fast. So what I'm about to say isn't a given, but like, if a lot of people are into something, there's something about it that's sort of redeeming, for a lack of a better word. Again, whether it's a food item that you're not accustomed to, or a music style, and credit to you to asking your daughter what that thing is for her, because there is something there. There is something that matters to her in the same way POD mattered to you,
Yeah. So I just
or in
think
some way like
that it's creates conversations,
It
and
does.
so I think this conversation is just really interesting. Geez, 25 years ago, would I have thought this was going to happen? No. And so like I'll tell my daughter later. I was like, oh yeah, I had syntax on my because I can't call you Joe. She'll be like, Joe who? I was like, syntax is on my podcast, and she'll be like, what? So before I release it, I'll probably just send her this so she can see it. But the thing is, it's part of, in as much as you're now part of my current life and my old man life, seeing her in the car when we're playing Night We Called It a Day, and the echo of 5, 5, 5, and she's in her car seat, she's going 5, 5, 5. That's part of my life, right? You know what I mean? So she's a little kid. This is so DeepSpace 5 is her gospel music in a way. You know what I mean? It's like, I grew up hearing Larnell Harris and Petra and Sandy Patty and all this mix. My dad is the gospel
Milo
person,
Lefevre.
All of that, right?
Yeah.
Petra. And so DS5 is hers.
Yeah. I mean, you've made some reference to that in the past, and it is a reminder of our age, but that is for us to have people that have enjoyed our music, to have raised grown children on our music, is just, and there's 15 of you in the world. We're not even talking about 10,000. We're talking, there's 100 people like this. But like we talked about earlier, like the Dougs of the world and Gregs and Nate and Dan, those guys.
Play-Doh, aka Crumb.
Man-Child.
Gotta put their rap names out there. I'm just joking.
This isn't like a false humility. This should have never been a part of my story. And it's like my whole story in some ways. I always say it's like the deepest part. Outside of my faith, it precedes everything. It precedes my lawyering, my family, everything. But the idea that I would, you would be able to share that about your life and then your children is just more than I've ever.
But it's cool to share that. It's cool to share that with you. But the only other music that I can say influenced my children that directly was Payable on Death.
Yeah.
Because there was a time when my oldest was struggling a little bit, and I just reached out to Sonny, and I was like, I just emailed him, and I was like, dude, what do you think? I don't know, because
life advice was Sonny.
Well, my oldest daughter and his oldest daughter are 2 months apart in
Gotcha.
age, and so I thought, what do you think? And he was like, let's chop it up. And so they were going to be in Ohio, so like just outside Toledo. Yeah. So that was like 4 hours away from me. Sure. So like just come down, and they were doing a festival, and so it was like T-Pain and like all this wildness.
That's awesome.
And they were just like, come
That's
down
awesome.
And you'll come out, and we're just gonna chill. And so I was just like, you need a break, we're gonna go down and hang out with these guys. And she was like, what? And I was like, yeah. I play it off like I made something happen. I just was like, hey, what do you think? And so we go down and so I'm backstage watching T-Pain, and I'm like, huh. And then, little John was like 15 feet away from me, and I'm like, and my daughter was like wanting to be a DJ at the time, and I was like, hey, you want to go meet little John? She was like, no, Dad, don't say anything. Don't do it. And I'm like, well, he's right there. No. And I'm like, okay. So we got to chop it up and hang out with them, and they really encouraged her.
That's really awesome.
A real
That's
blessing
awesome.
to her,
Yeah.
And so that's part of her life story.
Yeah.
And so people that take themselves as humans seriously and not their fame as seriously, it was really awkward trying to text and email and all this stuff to try to figure out how to get around security and do these things just to get in. I
Right.
We weren't supposed to be
Right.
there. So it was a lot of bobbing and weaving to be able to get behind the gate, so to speak. But those things matter. It wasn't because I was at this band's trailer. It was these humans want to bless my kid.
Yep.
And thank you. So in that case, I couldn't have done this with Black Alicious. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I couldn't. I listened to. I don't know. Is their first album called Nia or is it Naya?
So Nia's their second record.
Well, they
isn't
had
it?
They had the EP. It was
Yeah,
like EP,
that's right,
but then
that's
that's
right.
their
Yeah,
first
yeah,
one,
yeah.
right? So I've listened to that so many times since after.
That was a tough year. We lost him. It was like 18 months. Like Biz,
Yeah,
MF Doom.
yeah.
There's at least like two others.
Shock G.
Well,
It wasn't that year.
Fat Joe. It was like 18 months. Or is Fat Joe still alive?
Fat Joe's alive.
No, then it's Pun,
Pun.
right?
I think so. Might
It was
be.
about an 18-month period, and like it was like
We're gonna have to go fact check that. And
Yeah,
we'll put it in. We'll put it
we
in
know
the
we
notes.
lost Doom, Gift of Gab, Biz. Anyway, it was a real. There was who's the Ken Ox dude. Yeah, the Ken Ox guy died. You want to say versatile from Lifesavers. What's the Ken Ox guy's name?
I can't get it.
He died. Anyway, that was I just co-opt your Black religious talk, but I mean, that was those guys were young.
Yeah.
And very meaningful. I mean, like very important parts of our musical experience, and that was a weird sensation losing that group of folks right in that same time period.
I mean, specifically for me, it's funny. My connection, like, of course, yes, I knew Biz from the late '80s and just being around that kind of thing. But my oldest, or no, I'm not my oldest. My second oldest, she was really into Yo Gabba Gabba, right? And Biz had his segment on Yo Gabba Gabba for a long time, Beats with Biz. And so we went and saw Yo Gabba Gabba live, and he did this little mini set in the middle. So it's like, I can say I saw Biz.
Oh, that's really dope.
So it was like, this show and for a children's show and for what they did because they were our age, the people that created
Right.
it. So it's really cool show. But it was just also, it was like, I've seen Biz Markie perform.
No, that's awesome.
Because it was like, he did his bit, right? The yoga, but then he's like, for you adults that are in here, this is the cleanest thing I can do. And we're going to do
That's
this.
really
I'm going to do
fun.
this for you. So that was cool. But yeah, it's really weird because I just turned 48. And, my mom died when she was 59. And so my concept of mortality is shifting and what I leave behind. And when I'm gone, do people know what I'm about? Because it isn't about what kind of music I like or how I dress, or dad's favorite slang or whatever. But it helps. Knowing that dad liked all those things helps to understand me in a way.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think I was staring at some baseball cards I had the other day and just was thinking about how happy they made me. But how really important it was to me, like, not to be like a baseball card collector.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been thinking about a lot in this conversation, like, you and I are not any of these cultures.
No.
We're not. Nobody is. They are things, and they're experience. They're like climbing a mountain. They're a human experience that we love. I've used the word subjectively a lot. That we like.
Yeah.
That we enjoy. That brings us joy. That brings us more than joy. It's helped us through difficult. It's been a type of therapy. It's been a type of education. It's been all of these things. So it's bigger than culture, but like the way we dress, the way we look, the way we talk, these things are not us.
Right.
And we've known that, and we know that.
Yeah.
And they're part of like you said, they're like I don't know what the word is, or I keep wanting to say like talisman, or they're like heuristics. They're like shortcuts for family and friends, and maybe even ourselves, to like express ourselves or part ourselves, or to be described by, like you said. My kids know I like, UFOs, cryptocurrency, and hip hop. Like they know, in chess, like they know I love those things.
Right.
They also, I hope, know that that's not who I am.
Right.
And I don't want to be those things. I'm not a
Right.
like. I've said this. I mean, like lawyering's not my identity. Rapping's not my identity.
Right.
And so I don't. It's like everything we've talked about. It's like hard to make perfect sense of it, but like I think it's nice to be able to say these are things I love.
Yeah.
These things I live. These are things that have been like very important to me at different times. Like they're not like a costume or a like. These are things that, like you said, like got me through some difficult times when I was little, or helped me when I was a young parent. I mean, these are real tools
Yeah.
in our lives. But at the end of the day,
I think a song can be a milestone.
say again?
A song could be like a mile.
It's like a marker. That's right.
Because a song that
They really are.
I used to like will be like, it don't hit no more. That was for then.
Yeah.
That was for that day,
Yep.
that feeling.
Or
that,
and
that
like you referenced
memory.
earlier, like it could be like it doesn't hit, or it could hit, but just strictly for nostalgic purposes.
Yeah.
Like it takes me back to that. It helps me recall the things I learned or experienced, but
Right.
it doesn't like have the same import now.
But it's still the bizarre flip to that is how as an adult I can look at the overtly sexualized ideologies in popular culture and in music and all this stuff, and I think, oh, that's disgusting. They're just going too far. But then I'm like, wait a minute. Snoop was not vulgar. He was,
And
not
now
saying-
he's like the national spokesperson. I mean, he's
Yeah.
like he's literally the most beloved, universally beloved man.
it's funny.
It's crazy. It's wonderful.
Or just not
Because
just,
and it's different than what we're saying. It's like the same, but it's like Calvin Brodus
yeah.
is. You and I don't know Calvin Brodus, but
we don't know him.
we still don't know him. But like we know him better than when he was saying 187 on Undercover Cop. Like we know him better because that was like, and I don't know. It's beautiful to me. It's like it's amazing to get to see Snoop, like kind of still be a caricature of who he was.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I have him calling like what's the? I'm losing my words. Equestrian, for the Olympics or whatever, and the disconnect. But like life allows people A, to mature and wisen, and B, for people to see people for who they are,
Right.
and not some
But then he could do a show and come out crip walking and people take it super serious.
Sure, well, because he's
Or
still
Ice-T for that
well,
matter.
yeah, but because he still is like that's part of who he was.
Yeah.
And it's a talent he has
Yeah.
in addition. Anyway.
But the funny thing of it, it's like if I go and listen to R&B music that I thought was romantic or whatever when I was a kid, I'm listening, I'm like, I don't know if I'd say that to my wife.
A little Jodeci or
Yeah, because that was like,
Belle Biv DeVoe.
it was just like, yeah, a lot of those. It was just more veiled, but it was just as
Yeah, it's always been
out
pretty
there.
explicit.
out there. So it's just funny how we can clean up something for our own sake of nostalgia, or even Usher was really, now that I listen to it, I'm like,
Oh my
Okay.
gosh, I mean all of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, and we normalize and that is this kind of circles back to kind of what we started at the beginning. I mean, we acclimate to these things. We normalize them.
We're always around it.
Yeah, they become nostalgic, and then you do what I just did and said, "Oh, it's Snoop's just a fun-loving guy." When obviously a lot of the things he said aren't bringing well-being to himself or to other people. Mm-hmm. So we rationalize a lot.
Or I mean, even now it's like, oh, these kids rapping about gangs. They ain't never been in a gang. They ain't even been to Snoop. He was legit. He got arrested. Sure. Or Pac or whatever. I'm like, do you realize we're just celebrating that they legitimately were arrested for crime?
Correct.
What? Correct. But the only reason I think like that is because of my age.
Right.
And so I was talking to my 11-year-old. Last night. So they can read, but just because I'm dad, I'm reading the Chronicles of Narnia. We're just reading them. You guys go to sleep. I like Lewis. I'm just reading it anyway. So we're talking about it, and I was like, you know what? Lewis died in like the late 60s or early 70s. He didn't live a long time. But so he had in Narnia came out, he started releasing those books in like the early 50s. So he was already he wasn't young when he wrote these books. He was already a professor. He was just a writer. And I was like, I was explaining to her, I was like, these books are good because they were actually written by a very mature person who had already had life experience and education and stuff. And this is just his imagination and his creativity. I was like, but now you're going to find people your age in the current culture, they don't respect age. And I was like, your dad has earned these white hairs in his beard. I was like, and I'm proud of them. I was like, because they mean I went through something. Yours were prophetic that you were about to go through stuff. Mine. but I was like, what I want you to understand is that there was a time when people celebrated older people because they knew they could learn something from them. I was like, we're reading older books because you can learn from this skill and this creativity that Lewis wrote with transcends time.
Yeah, it does.
And because he came from a time when this craft, he wrote because he wanted to write a fairy tale. He didn't write because he wanted to write an allegory.
Right.
You know what I mean? So now we're like, how can I create an allegory for this and make it interesting? No, just start writing about a fawn. Right. And I think that in the same way for me was when I was listening to Deep Space 5, I was hearing you guys read about fawns.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that you got around to the lion.
Yep.
The lion wasn't not important. Mm-mm. It was just the process. You will end up talking about the lion because the lion is the most important to you, but you like fawns.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a really weird illustration.
No, it's actually really beautiful. It's too generous for who Deep Space 5 is. You're comparing the literary process of one of the greatest writers of all and thinkers of all time to come, but it's really beautiful. What you just said started with the fawn and with the lion. I mean, that's actually, I'm going to put that in a song. It's a really
well, when we
I've already done my Clive Staples verse on Crumbs, so but I'll credit you.
What was that on the Black Lung?
No, that was on.
No. Your verse was really short on Black Lung.
It was on. It was on. Unique, just like everybody else. The song "Crumbs."
Oh.
I say a bunch of.
I'm gonna have to go back and listen.
C.S. Lewis.
But so no, just.
But I want to. But I do. So A, it was a beautiful line. It really was. B, if fawn is like hip hop and the lion is Jesus, or trivial and Jesus. I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, we like talking about the fawn, and we knew that we ultimately wanted to reflect the lion as well. So part of it's like a taste thing. Part of it's like what we preferred. It's like a preference thing. Mm-hmm. But we said this the whole time. Some of it's a little rationalizing. We always meant it. And we said it from the very beginning. And the way Tadashi does it is fine. Yeah. The way Cross Movement did it is, It's just like the elephant. They're doing it one way, we're doing it another way.
Bizzle.
Like
Yeah.
Shai Linne, I listen to a lot of Shai Linne. The way not only the way he does is fine, it's amazing. You got, I think for us though, like precisely because the truth about God is sacred.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the whole, this debate about like whether you can do Christian rap is in part fundamental. It is a lot of issues to it. But like one of them is like, can you take something holy and put it in and wrap it in something, not just of the world, but can you wrap it in something that isn't also sacred? And there's this like false narrative, right? That like these like Renaissance melodies and our hymns are somehow sacred. But we could all admit there's like more and less, sacred's not the right word, but like serious styles of melody and musical theme. Mm-hmm. So it's like a reasonable question whether you can take something as holy and as important as God and the truths about God and put it really, wrap it in really any sort of popular genre to include hip hop. I don't have the answer to that question. Well, we may be seconds. Let me just finish this one thing. No. I may have been performing an act of sacrilege this whole time. I'm available to that truth and reality in heaven. But in the context of our best guess about it, we wanted to keeps those truths sacred when they're not front and center the whole time.
Yeah.
When they're held for those important moments, I think it increases, not only does it keep it more special, not sacred, just special. It also it has a kind of persuasive element to it, where you're not just trying to like, this is in the verse, but you're not just sort of spoon feeding the meal. And truthfully, it's all real easy to like defend it, to like, you can sort of use a lot. You can sort of, I mean, Jesus was explicit and ambiguous all at the same time. It's like we said, he was cross movement and DeepSpace 5 all at the same time. Mm-hmm. There were plenty of times where he was ambiguous and Socratic and not direct. And there were plenty of times where he was brutally direct.
Yeah.
So anyway, time, place for everything. Ecclesiastes.
No, the concept of you can't take the sacred into the secular suggests that my light isn't as powerful. Where there's darkness, I have to hang out where all the light is at. I have to hang out with the salt, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
It's not true. It's not the calling. I think what I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think agreed. I totally agree. and that's sort of the point of the light is to take it, but it's not a question of whether the gospel would be tarnished or undermined by hip hop. I mean, that's not the question. The question is just like, what is the level of gravitas owed the gospel under any circumstance? I'm not even talking about hip hop. I'm just talking about like, and I don't know that there's an answer to it. I don't know that there's an answer to it. It's just, that's part of what anyone who is, because there's a difference, but anybody who, anyway.
No, this is good because we are talking about something that has been talked about for forever. When all the hippies became Christians and started making Jesus music.
That's right.
People hated it.
It predates that. I mean, this is early church stuff.
But I mean that's just in the last 50 yeyears.
Sure, right.
I'm a child of a Jesus freak.
Yeah.
So my expression comes from, but that the innocence of that, where it's like I'm just going to create for Jesus, doesn't mean everybody says it that way.
That's right.
The concept, the reason we have this legalism in music is because we think if you're a Christian, you have to be evangelistic with every single thing.
Or just a certain type of way. And I was going to say this earlier. I mean, Christianity has no culture.
Right.
I mean, it's probably a little bit dramatic and probably a little bit untrue, but it ought not have a culture.
It doesn't have a popular culture.
Well, it doesn't. Well, it has a. I mean, it obviously has a culture.
Yeah.
But it's not a culture. It's not like. I mean, obviously has. It has attributes.
Right.
I don't think Christianity should have a culture, and truthfully, I think culture is just. When this. So a couple things. You're exactly right. This is an age-old question. It literally dates back to the early church.
Yep.
And the reason it does is because there's a question about how the gospel should be communicated and represented. That's all this conversation is about. And I think certainly we have erred on the side of for communication to be useful, for it to communicate, it has to be relatable.
Yeah.
Not in a strategic way. It just has to be. I bring it up every year. The one Thanksgiving hymn that we sing. It's like first the corn and then the ear, first the I don't know what it is, stalk and then the ear, then the full corn shall appear. It's like in the hymn. It's like this is the least relatable. None of us work on a farm anymore. This is not a useful.
Yeah.
Communication of a religious truth. I mean, it's not completely. So it's not strategic, it's communicative. It's like what we've talked about the whole time. What could you hear? What could I hear? And we look, and it's important for there to be people who are wired the same way and communicate similarly to create communication that way. That's certainly the side I know that you and I have erred on. Whether it's right or not, I don't know.
Well, but in the same way, like you know that my wife and I oversee Shelter Skate Church. So, but when I'm specifically at the skate park and I know people are going to look to me specifically for faith, I don't water that down. I'm like,
yeah,
you are specifically coming to hear me talk about this thing, and we will talk about this thing, but in a way that you hear, because I already speak the language and I already dress this way, I already think this way. Right. This is my norm, but the topic is, you know your audience, right? So I know my audience and what they're coming for and what they want to hear and what they think they're going to hear and what they need to hear, and I have to use discernment and ask God to help me. But it's different than like if I record a song to my wife. It's to her, right? You know, it's about when we met, and it's about the things that I like about her and that I love her, and it's a little crass, but I guess Hillsong isn't romantic.
I totally disagree.
I'm gonna have to. I will be shocked the day I hear a child say, "My parents made me listening to Hillsong." Okay, they were probably listening to Jodeci, but the
embarrassingly, I'm just gonna have to depart from. The song is very erotic.
That's just me. My thinking will just go that direction. But the idea that we have to be a specific way.
I'm going to hijack this whole thing. I've thought about this so much. I actually think I'm going to go back to this Hillsong being erotic thing. I actually think, I mean, it's been true in my life. I mean, it's actually been true in my life. I think it's actually been a phenomenon of contemporary Christian music and young people that I think there has actually been a weird, I may be admitting something that is very specific to me and nobody else in the world, but I actually think there's been a weird conflation of, for young people who grow up listening in their formative years when they're dating, a conflation of some of our religious experiences with interpersonal emotions. I mean, it's happened I have a weird association between, because I mean, it's so crazy. This is not what we were talking about, but for anybody, I think it's an important thing to be aware of because our worship is very emotional. Mm-hmm. It's not to the point that I'm being contrarian on. It's not really. There's nothing obviously romantic about it, but in our formative years, when for those of us who cared about our faith at an early age and were excited and wanted to be entering into those worshipful experiences, and also discovering ourselves romantically and with other people, I think there can be a weird confusion over those emotions. This is as a little bonus observation for everybody out there. Good luck. Good luck reeling us back in.
You just went ocean floor deep on some kind of stupid snarky thing. I just want to say.
Yeah.
The smart aleck thing I wanted to say.
That was my bad. I probably should have just left it.
But it's the thing is, interestingly, that yes, I became aware of you because of music, and music has just had a big influence on my life and my world. As a coping mechanism and as an inspiration and as a lot of things. And I found that, like, the one time we made that song, I was like, that's really freeing. I was like, that's amazing. I wish I'd done that before. Mm-hmm. I was like, because it was like once I got going and once you didn't have to stop and say, no, don't do that. You non-rapper. I was like, wow, this feels normal once I get going. This is really, really cool. And so as far as hip hop heads go, they're like, nah, you can't rap. Don't do that again. Where like me, I'm like, yes, should do it, because then I'll create it from a place where I'm not trying to do anything else. I'm not trying to be anything else. And we'll just make something that sounds like something. And maybe someone will like it because I'm too old to care. Because I had this idea recently that what if no one was allowed to make music until they were mature, until they were in their 40s, and then they had stuff to talk about?
Well, it's true. I mean, so it's weird. So most people can't make music until they're more mature. So that's what makes real musicians, which I don't count myself among, so prodigious and interesting, is that they are a type of genius. They come musically of age at 16, 17, 18 years old, and even when they're just pop stars, there's a maturity about them, like in their vocal talent and in their other attributes that most people don't have, including most people that have musical ability. And I do think most, and what happens is because I was like this, when you're young, you're like, I want to make music. I got to get it out, it's got to be mine. Like, I remember being just like, I got to have my own beats and like, I want to get this out. And I would have been much better served, like writing, rapping over other people's instrumentals. It would have made for better live performance. It would have allowed me to mature. I mean, it would have been much, much better, but that's not how people are wired. I think you're right. I think most people will make better music. It's not even really the older they get, just the more time they have.
Or maybe if music was like tattooing, there's no way to become a tattooist unless a tattooist trains you.
Yeah.
Things like that. Like if you treated music like being a journeyman or something like a trade.
Yeah.
Like someone had to train you to do the sound you want to make, and then you make it your own.
Well, and it's
just this randomness.
Yeah, no, it's a little complicated because I think this goes to the people like Pigeon and a million other people. But I was thinking about the Baloney record. I was thinking about Lab Click. I mean, I think the problem. I think that's true for a lot of people. I think being mentored in life and in music is the best, and trained is the best. But that's not the place from whence, I've said whence twice. That is not the place. That's probably two more. That's not where our most special music comes from. Our most special music comes from early raw. Untrained's probably a little bit too much, but like, I mean, that's the best of the best didn't go through any licensing process or any, they just kind of were.
Yeah.
But for the rest of us, I agree, it probably should be some, like an academy you have to go to.
I don't know. It's just this random thought process. Just because sometimes I feel bad for like, I don't know why I read comment sections on social media, because then I wish I didn't.
Yeah.
But like someone put a reel about Nirvana, and then the comment section blows up. Kurt would never do this. Kurt would never do that. I'm like, dude committed suicide at 27. He had so much trauma. He was an addict. He's like all these things, right? I was like, and you're idolizing him as though he might not be better in his 50s or closer to 60s. Like he might not have a healthy point of view.
Well, it's funny you used him, because I was thinking about him kind of the whole time we were talking, or him. I was thinking about him and Stevie Wonder and Quincy Jones and some other people, but like Michael, like. So in those cases, it's both and, right? So you don't want the best Kurt Cobain was 17-year-old Kurt Cobain or 21-year-old Kurt Cobain. Yeah. I actually, we don't know all the counterfactuals, but like, I think that's what I'm saying. I think that's the best one.
You mean as a creative?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I think you're right that 50-year-old Kurt Cobain, it's sort of like Charles Barkley. I think about him, I think about, there's so many athletes that fall into this category, bunch of musicians. I feel it more with athletes. It's weird, but they're like, they're reasonably a certain type of human at 23 and a different human at 58.
Yeah.
And both of them are so compelling. Right. Charles Barkley was like this genius physical talent. Mm-hmm. He was a very interesting, provocative personality at 24. And now he's this like great statesman. I mean, Snoop's the same way, but like now he's this great elder statesman. And I think, I think both of them are important. B, to your point, like, we miss something if we, it'd be nice to see what Kurt Cobain was producing at 50. It would probably be pretty good. In the same way, what Charles contributes is really great at this juncture. But I think with geniuses, I don't know if it's better or worse, but that first overture is groundbreaking.
Yeah.
That's like the thing. And artists chase that. It's like Eminem. Like, there was something pretty revolutionary. There's something pretty unique about original M.
Yeah.
And he spent his entire career basically trying to replicate it. Is he still super talented now? Yes. But like, he can't really outdo himself.
No, he can't.
He's an example of, he almost becomes a caricature of himself.
Yes.
The U2s of the world, or there's been plenty of people that have remade themselves. I mean, even Taylor Swift, who's still pretty young, but like, there are people that remake themselves and continue in their relevancies, Jay-Z's or whatever the case may be. But the really gifted ones can't. It's almost like, on some level, artists, they only have kind of like one thing to give. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not true, because I agree with what you said. I think they have a spectrum. I think they have a lifetime of things to give. But there's one thing. I'm talking about the 1%ers.
Yeah.
They come in and they do something that's the most authentic, the most real expression. I actually think it's true kind of for all of us. I mean, I think like I would feel that way. Like, I would feel like, it's not like can I write, like, are my cadences a little bit better? Like, I mean, there's some things I do better now. I don't want to use myself, but like, even I feel like like the most like interesting things I did were early on. And I'm glad I've been able to do it longer because it's helped. I am like what you're talking about. Like time has helped me, but I think for those other people, I'm repeating myself, but I think for those other people, you gotta that first thing has to exist.
Well, okay. Think about it this way then. Let's just say I heard an interview with you when Night We Call Today came out, and you put out an opinion on there, and I bought into it, and then I found that opinion, laced into all your lyrics. That's all I could hear anymore. And then I don't know you, right? And you're in obscurity. Nobody knows where you're at. Whatever. Where are they now? Okay. And then someone does something on social media. I'm like, no, Syntax would never say it that way. He would never do that. He would still wear baggy pants and backpacks because that's who he is. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, got it. No, I understand. Yeah. You can't. Yeah, that part's.
That's real hip hop.
And in fact, the opposite is true. I mean, I think without fail, that's sort of part of what I was saying. Like, Kurt Cobain would be a different person now.
Yeah.
It's just like Snoop. Yeah. It's just like Snoop. He's just a different. He's not a different person, but he's like. He just like all of us. He's changed and. We had life experiences, and
we want people to stay angry for us.
Yeah.
Or stay.
We want them to be the same expression.
I want to live vicariously for you because I never got famous.
That's right.
Because I never recorded. Because I never this.
That's right.
I want, someone to be the.
Yeah, we want our artists to be like kind of frozen in time.
Right. Because it's very weird to be an adult and then look at a picture of Kurt Cobain and be like, dang, I listened to him when he was alive.
Yeah.
But I was a kid.
Sure.
And I was like, he's only like 10 years older than me. That thought process. And I'm like, weird, Yeah. So I think I guess in my mind, it would make sense that we'd talk about music or something like that. But I think when we create whatever we create, if it's really sincere from us, authentic representation of who we are in that moment at that time, everything we are will be interwoven into it, for good or for bad. So whatever strength level my faith is at is going to be in it, and whatever skill set I have is going to be there. Whatever I am is going to be right there. But if I force any of it, it's going to be contrived, and someone will want that. Someone will want that fake me, but then they'll be like, "That's you. That's real." And I'm like, no, I just worked really hard on that lie. But then there's the authentic me that just says, I want to make a song for my wife. Please help me. You're like, yeah, okay. And we record it the night before my anniversary at like 11 o'clock in your kitchen, right? And my wife like really liked it, and so that was an authentic me. That was. I didn't have time to practice. And now, because I think about it now, I'm like, dude, I should have did a voiceover and I should have said this and I should have done this. But that would have been Jodeci. That wouldn't have been me.
Right.
It
would not have been Jodeci under any circumstances.
Shut up. But you understand what I'm saying. But that would have been me trying to be something that just doesn't sound like me. Yep. Because even recently I made a playlist of all the love songs that I relate to more, that I realized recently that what I learned about romantic music was really from synth pop and new wave music, because that was the first music that was coming over the radio when I was a little kid. Yes, I was hearing Bambaataa, but on the radio that was just constantly around me at that time was new wave music. And it was just this random idea. I was like, how much new wave music do I know? And I made like a 3-hour playlist. And I was like, amazing. And all of these songs to a very young me were very romantic. So when I got to teenage me, romantic was all this R&B, but I realized that's not an authentic who I am. Who's Going to Drive You Home by the Cars makes more sense to my heart than whatever.
Right. Well, so two things. I think this is totally off topic, but I think creative outlets are just very important. And I think we're designed, where, wherever it is we're from, it's a creative source. We live in a very creative place, and our lives are about creation and expression, and or that's part of our experience. And I think a little bit to all the things you're talking about, I think people should explore that in their own lives and find ways to do it. I do think it's not being contrarian. It's like market correcting. So anytime I like zag a little bit on conversation, you and I both have used like the phrasing like authentic self or our voice and that kind of stuff. That's not always what creative process is about, right? I mean, sometimes being creative, whether it's in literature or poetry or theater art or music, whatever the case may be. I mean, it's pantomiming. That's what acting is, right? Like acting is, there's I guess there's a style of acting that's like true to who you are, but like acting is like I know nothing about acting, but like I think it is definitionally portraying something that you aren't necessarily, again, which is a little bit different than whether it's authentic. But sometimes art is a pantomime, and it's an okay pantomime. B is a little bit like I'm not culture. Like I think sometimes we wind up, and I'm including me in this, but like we sound kind of dumb, sort of like saying that there's this voice to be found, and like this is my voice or this is not my voice. I mean, I do think there's a genuineness to who we are. Like I think there's something more real than not to be expressed. But I think especially in like hip hop culture, like we can get real carried away with like using that language of like.
Sure. I mean, because everybody wants to feel like they're original and they want to copy somebody and
at the same time.
Because I saw this.
Our whole lives we are LLMs. That's the crazy part. It's like we're seeing this in real time with AI development. I mean, like our brains are like predictive replicators. We obviously believe that there is an immutable soul so I'm not like, but like in some ways our like to act like our brains are not just constantly spitting out basically our brains are like Taco Bells. They're just like, we're taking the ingredients we see in the world and just trying our best to maybe make it look like a cheesy gordita crunch instead of like a burrito supreme. But it's not like we haven't invented something. We're kind of always,
and none of it's Mexican food.
None of it.
So it's not authentic.
It is authentically Americana.
Exactly. Man, it's good. No, I think for this conversation, this is kind of like a when worlds collide thing. Because when we first met a couple of times, it was just trying to figure out like when you said when you first got into hip hop music, you're like, I'm not even from that, but I got it.
Yep.
And in the same way, I'm like, I was around it. It was my landscape. It was the scenario around me. But in a lot of ways, I didn't get it because I was so detailed. I just pull everything apart scenario wise. And I'm like, I don't think I can pull any of that off. And given my environment in the neighborhood I live in and how people feel about this culture, I'm going to put that back over here until I heard Q-Tip say, back in the day when I was a teenager, I was like, wait a minute. And he put that whole line together. I was like, that's amazing. But that was the first time I ever paid attention to the poetry of it.
Right.
That was the first time. Literally,
people are attracted to different aspects of it.
Literally the first time. But then that same night, literally the same night as I saw Metallica's Enter Sandman video, because those both albums came at the same time. And I said, I'm going to choose this because it scares me. The church kid in me was like, that is wrong and bad.
Right.
And I'm going to go after that. Which is the concept of angst and rebellion. But what piqued my heart was Q-Tip, but I went after what James Hetfield was saying because it scared me, which is the whole concept of why people watch horror movies, which is a completely different tangent. But then I became a legitimate fan of that kind of music. But in the end, what has served me well was to stick with something that I understood, that I had a baseline with. And so when I found what you were doing, I had a baseline, but you were doing it in a way that my soul said, I'm hungry for this. The way their Taco Bell works for me.
Yeah.
And I will go to this drive-through all the time. But back around to when I first kind of reintroduced myself to the fact that you existed was, I don't know how I found your Instagram page, but you had just released The Goodness, and you released the track you did with the homies from Tribe and from Black Sheep, and I heard it and I freaked out, and I went home.
You and me both, Draz and Jerobi.
Yeah, I went home and I was like, Jen, you got to hear this song, and and she's like, yeah. I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is Syntax the Terrific. It's like I never talked about this stuff with her, and so I was like, this is really dope, and then this and this, and you know who they are, and you know who this is, and it's just, she was like, but she was like trying to cook dinner, and my wife was like, don't go in her kitchen.
Yeah.
Just because my wife's really good at cooking, and so it's like, and plus she's like, but she's more like, if you want me to hear what you're saying, don't talk to me about this right now. I'm cooking.
Right.
But I'm like, no, I gotta tell you. And so I was like, this is great. And so then I started paying attention, and then I was like all about The Goodness. And then it wasn't long after that I met you at the mall, which was
really strange,
really cool.
Providential. Yeah, very cool.
But and here we are. So this is good. This
very
feels good.
I really appreciate it.
So thanks for coming and talking with me. We'll just have to get out a calendar and on purpose do this. So we'll just say, what are you doing in 2 weeks? Because that's what old people do, apparently. We can't just call each other and say, like, yo, let's do this. I can't. I'm tired.
And what professional people do.
What professional people... Yeah, say it like that. That sounds better. But yes, thank you for coming on the Audacity podcast. So for what it's worth, again, Audacity is saying something that you think you can get away with or something you think that needs to be said. And hopefully we did both today. This is our longest podcast to date, by the way. And I hope it was enjoyed. So please go be authentic as you understand authentic to be, and keep God in it as much as possible to the best that you understand it. All right. We'll see you next time.